The cold is what Elena Voss notices first every morning. Not the kind of cold that makes you reach for a thicker blanket, but the deep, bone-settling cold that reminds you there is no blanket. There's only the sleeping bag she found behind a sporting goods store 2 winters ago, the one with the broken zipper she's repaired 17 times with dental floss and determination. She's 58 years old, and she's been living in her 15-year-old Honda Civic for 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. Not that she's counting, except she is. Every single morning when she wakes up in whatever parking lot or trailhead or forgotten forest road she's chosen for night, she counts. It's a habit now, like breathing. The dog shift beside her in the passenger seat, his warm bulk, the only thing that kept her from freezing last night. Ranger. That's what she calls him, though she has no idea if that's his real name. He'd found her, or she'd found him. The details blur now, about 6 months into her homelessness. He'd been limping along Highway 2, skinny and scared, and she'd stopped to give him the last of her peanut butter sandwich. He never left. Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story is touching you already, make sure you're subscribed. I've got something extra special saved for tomorrow. Ranger is a mutt, probably some shepherd mixed with retriever, and maybe a dozen other breeds that nature decided to combine into something uniquely loyal and deeply stubborn. His coat is thick and gray-brown, his eyes amber gold, and his left ear has a notch in it from some old injury. He's gotten her through nights so cold she thought she wouldn't wake up. He's worn her away from dangerous people. He's given her a reason to keep going, when keeping going felt impossible. Elena pushes herself upright in the driver's seat, every joint protesting. Her back hasn't been right since she started sleeping in the car. Neither has her hip. Neither has anything, really. She's learned to move slowly in the mornings, to give her body time to remember it's supposed to work. Through the frost-covered windshield, she can see where she parked last night. A trailhead parking area about 40 minutes outside of North Bend, Washington. The lot is empty except for her car. It's early November, and the tourist season ended weeks ago. Nobody hikes up here when snow threatens and darkness comes at 4 in the afternoon. That's exactly why she chose it. She pulls on her jacket, the one she's worn so many times the cuffs are frayed to threads, and cracks the door open. The cold rushes in like a living thing, stealing what little warmth the car held. Ranger stretches and jumps out after her, immediately trotting to the tree line to do his business. Elena follows more slowly, her breath fogging in the November air. The mountains rise around her, dark with Douglas fir and western hemlock, their peaks already white with the season's first snow. She used to love the mountains. Back when she had a home to return to, when wilderness was a place you visited and then left. Now it's just where she hides. She walks to the trailhead bathroom, grateful it hasn't been locked for the season yet. The water still runs, icy cold, and she washes her face and hands with a small bar of soap she keeps in her pocket. In the scratched metal mirror above the sink, she barely recognizes herself. Her hair, once dark brown and carefully styled, is now streaked with gray and pulled back in a ponytail held together with a rubber band. Her face is weathered, lines etched deep around her eyes and mouth. She's lost weight, too much weight. Her cheekbones are sharp, her eyes sunken. She looks away. Looking doesn't help. Back at the car, she pulls out her camp stove, the one luxury she's allowed herself, purchased with money from selling plasma when she was desperate enough to sit in that clinic for an hour with a needle in her arm. She heats water for instant oatmeal and coffee, the only breakfast she can afford most days. Ranger sits beside her, patient and watchful. She gives him half the oatmeal, even though it means she'll be hungry by noon. He needs it more than she does. He's been limping again, favoring his right front paw. She can't afford a vet, can barely afford food, but she'll figure something out. She always does. The oatmeal is bland and gummy, but it's warm, and warmth is everything when you're this cold. The coffee is instant, bitter, barely drinkable, but the caffeine helps her think, helps her plan the day ahead. She needs to find somewhere to park tonight that won't get her hassled by police. She needs to check the day labor office in North Bend, see if there's any work. She needs to fill up the car's gas tank before it gets too low, because running out of gas means no heat, and no heat in November could kill her. She's gotten good at this kind of planning. The constant mental calculus of survival. How many dollars left? How many miles a car can go? How many days until she can afford another week at the RV park where she showers and does laundry? How cold it will get tonight, and whether the sleeping bag will be enough. It's exhausting, but it's life now. 3 years ago, Elena had a home, a small house in Everett with a mortgage she was close to paying off, a job as an administrative assistant at a medical supply company, a husband, Michael, who'd worked in construction for 30 years. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable, stable, safe. Then Michael got sick, pancreatic cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. He was dead 6 months later, and in those 6 months, their savings vanished into medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. Experimental treatments, that didn't work. Hospice care, that cost more than Elena made in a year. She'd held his hand the night he died, sitting in a hospital room they couldn't afford, promising him she'd be okay. She'd been lying, but he believed her, or pretended to. After the funeral, the bills kept coming. $20,000, $40,000, $60,000. Numbers so big they stopped meaning anything. She tried to negotiate with the hospital, with the collection agencies, with anyone who would listen. But medical debt doesn't care about your grief. It doesn't care that you're alone now, or that you can't sleep, or that every morning you wake up and forget for a second that your husband is dead. She lost the house 8 months after Michael died, lost her job 3 months after that when she couldn't focus, couldn't function, couldn't pretend everything was fine when everything was shattered. Her son, David, had offered to help, had said she could move in with him and his family in Portland. But Elena knew what that meant. She'd be a burden, the grieving widow living in the spare room, reminding everyone of loss and failure. She'd seen how David's wife looked at her, with pity and barely concealed irritation. So Elena had said no, had told David she'd figured out that she had a plan. She hadn't had a plan. She'd had a car, some clothes, and about $800 to her name. That was 3 years ago. The oatmeal is gone. The coffee is cold. Elena packs up her camp stove and stores it in the trunk with her other belongings. 2 garbage bags of clothes. A box of books she can't bring herself to throw away. A photo album from when life made sense. Ranger watches her with patient eyes, waiting. "Come on, buddy," she says, her voice rough from cold and disuse. "Let's see if there's work today." She drives down from the trailhead, the car's engine reluctant in the cold. The heater barely works anymore, and the check engine light has been on for 6 months. She can't afford to fix it, can't afford to replace it. So she drives carefully, nursing the dying vehicle that represents the last barrier between her and complete destitution. The day labor office opens at 7. She arrives at 6:30 and sits in the parking lot with Ranger, watching other people arrive. Men mostly, some women, all of them with the same weathered look, the same careful guardedness. The economy of the desperate. At 7, she goes inside. The woman behind the desk barely looks up. "Name?" "Elena Voss." "Any experience?" "Office work. Customer service. Cleaning." "Nothing today. Check back tomorrow." It's the same answer she's gotten for 3 days straight. Elena nods, swallows her disappointment, and walks back to her car. Ranger is waiting, his tail wagging when he sees her. At least someone is happy to see her. She's about to start the engine when she notices the envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. Her first thought is a parking ticket, which would be a disaster she can't afford. But when she retrieves it, she sees it's not from parking enforcement. It's a letter, an actual letter, in a thick cream-colored envelope with her name written across the front in elegant script. Elena Voss. No address, just her name. Her hand shakes slightly as she opens it. Inside is a single sheet of expensive paper and a business card. The letter reads, "Dear Ms. Voss, I am writing to inform you that you are the sole beneficiary of the estate of Margaret Halloway, deceased as of October 3rd. Ms. Halloway was your maternal grandmother. Per the terms of her will, you have inherited property located in the Cascade Mountains, specifically a carriage house and surrounding 18 acres in an unincorporated area near Skykomish, Washington. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to finalize the transfer of property. There are certain conditions attached to the inheritance that we must discuss in person. Sincerely, Nathan Reeves, ESQ, Reeves and Associates. Elena reads the letter 3 times. Then a fourth, Margaret Halloway, her grandmother, a woman Elena hasn't thought about in over 40 years. Section 2, the catalyst, inciting incident. Elena sits in her car in the day labor parking lot, the letter trembling in her hands, and tries to remember her grandmother's face. The memories are distant, fragmented. She'd been young when her mother cut all ties with the family, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She remembers visiting a house in the mountains once, a long drive from wherever they'd been living at the time. She remembers trees and darkness and a woman with severe gray hair who'd looked at Elena's mother with something that might have been disappointment or might have been grief. There'd been an argument. Elena hadn't understood the words, but she'd understood the tone. Sharp, final, the kind of anger that doesn't heal. Her mother had packed them up that same night, and they'd left. They never went back. And whenever Elena asked about her grandmother after that, her mother's face would close up, and she'd say in a voice that allowed no argument, "We don't talk about her. We don't talk about that side of the family." Elena had learned not to ask. Her mother died 12 years ago, taking whatever family history she'd been hoarding to the grave with her. Elena had gone through her belongings afterward, looking for photographs, letters, anything that might explain the silence. She'd found nothing, as if Margaret Halloway had never existed. And now, apparently, Margaret Halloway was dead, and she'd left Elena property. 18 acres and a carriage house. Elena doesn't know what to feel. Relief? Suspicion? Anger at being remembered only in death after decades of silence? Mostly, she feels numb. Ranger whines softly from the passenger seat, sensing her distress. She reaches over and scratches behind his ears, feeling the solid warmth of him grounding her. "What do you think, buddy?" she asks quietly. "Think it's real?" He leans into her hand, his amber eyes steady and trusting, as if to say, only one way to find out. Elena pulls out her phone. It's an old flip phone, the cheapest plan she could find, used mostly for the rare time she needs to call about work or check in with David, who calls once a month with the dutiful Gilda's son, who knows he should do more, but doesn't know how. She dials the number on Nathan Reeves's business card. A receptionist answers on the second ring. Professional, polished. Reeves and Associates. "How may I direct your call?" "I'm calling for Nathan Reeves. My name is Elena Voss. He sent me a letter about an inheritance." "One moment, please. The whole music is classical, something with strings." Elena waits, her heart beating faster than it should. Then a male voice, smooth and careful. "Ms. Voss, thank you for calling. I wasn't certain the letter would reach you. How did you find me?" Elena asks, because that's the first question that matters. She's been essentially invisible for 3 years. No permanent address, no job, no presence beyond what's required to survive. Your grandmother hired a private investigator 6 months before she died. Reeves says she wanted to ensure the inheritance went to you specifically, not to any other relatives. The investigator tracked you through your vehicle registration and various public records. I had someone place a letter on your car this morning when my office was informed of your location. Someone had been watching her, following her. The thought makes her skin crawl, but she pushes the feeling aside. You said there are conditions. Elena says, yes, per the terms of the will. You must take possession of the property within 30 days of being notified. You must also reside on the property for a minimum of 90 consecutive days. If you fail to meet these conditions, the property passes to a conservation trust. Elena's mind races. 90 days. 3 months. That means winter in the mountains. It means snow and isolation, and living in a place she knows nothing about. But it also means a roof. Heat. A place that isn't the front seat of a dying car. What kind of condition is the property in? She asks. A pause. I haven't personally inspected it. Ms. Voss, your grandmother was very private about the property. It's been sealed for approximately 50 years, according to county records. No one has accessed in all that time. 50 years. Sealed. The words echo strangely in Elena's mind. Why would someone seal a house for 50 years? Is there anything else I should know? She asks. Another pause, longer this time. Your grandmother left a letter for you, to be opened only after you've taken possession of the property. Beyond that, I can only tell you that the inheritance is legitimate. The property is yours if you meet the conditions, and you have 30 days to decide. 30 days. Elena looks around the parking lot, at the other people arriving, hoping for work that might not exist. At her car, the check engine light glowing like a warning. At Ranger, patient and trusting beside her. She doesn't need 30 days. I'll meet the conditions, she says. When can I get the keys? This afternoon, if you're available. My office is in Everett. Shall we say 2 o'clock? Elena checks the time. It's just after 8. That gives her 6 hours to prepare, though she's not sure what preparation means when you own almost nothing. 2 o'clock, she agrees. She ends a call and sits in silence, the letter still in her hand. Ranger nudges her arm with his nose. A question. We're going to have a house, buddy, she says quietly, at least for a while. His tail wags, cautious but hopeful. Elena starts the car and drives out of the parking lot, her mind already working through the logistics. She has $43 to her name. She'll need gas to get to Everett and then to wherever this property is located. She'll need food for both of them. She'll need to figure out if there's electricity at the house, water, heat, but those are problems for later. Right now, she has something she hasn't had in 3 years. Hope. The attorney's office is on the 3rd floor of a professional building in downtown Everett. Elena parks in a public lot, feeds a meter with quarters she can barely afford, and tells Ranger to stay in the car with the windows cracked. I'll be quick, she promises. She catches a reflection in the building's glass doors and winces. She looks exactly like what she is, a homeless woman who's been sleeping in a car. Her clothes are wrinkled. Her hair needs washing, and there's a coffee stain on her jacket that won't come out no matter how many times she scrubbed it. But there's no helping it now. She pushes through the doors. The office is elegant in an understated way. Hardwood floors, leather furniture, plants that look professionally maintained. The receptionist glances up, and Elena sees the moment of assessment, the slight narrowing of eyes, the almost invisible shift in posture. She's used to it. The way people look at you when they can tell you're poor, as if poverty might be contagious. Elena Voss, she says, keeping her voice steady. I have a 2 o'clock appointment with Nathan Reeves. The receptionist's expression smooths into professional neutrality. Of course. Please have a seat. He'll be with you in just a moment. Elena sits on the edge of a leather chair, trying not to think about how much the furniture probably costs. Trying not to notice the way her jacket smells like car and unwashed fabric and desperation. 5 minutes later, a door opens and a man emerges. Nathan Reeves is younger than Elena expected, maybe 40, with dark hair going gray at the temples and wire-rimmed glasses. He's wearing a suit that probably cost more than Elena made in a month at her old job. Ms. Voss. He extends his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Elena shakes it. His grip is firm, professional. And if he notices the roughness of her hands or the dirt under her nails, he's polite enough not to show it. Please, come in. His office is lined with law books and diplomas. He gestures to a chair across from his desk, and Elena sits, feeling profoundly out of place. Reeves settles into his own chair and pulls out a manila folder. Before we proceed, I need to verify your identity. Do you have identification? Elena pulls out her driver's license, the one that still lists her old address, the house she lost. Reeves examines it, makes a note, and hands it back. Thank you. Now, as I mentioned on the phone, your grandmother Margaret Halloway passed away on October 3rd. She was 92 years old and died in a care facility in Seattle. She'd been there for approximately 3 years. 3 years. The same amount of time Elena has been homeless. The symmetry feels cruel. Was she alone when she died? Elena asks, though she's not sure why it matters. She had staff with her. Reeves says carefully, she had no other family who visited. If that's what you're asking. No other family. Just like Elena, Reeves opens a folder and pulls out a document. This is the deed to the property. 18 acres in unincorporated Skycomish County, with a carriage house structure built in 1968. There's also a well, a septic system that was installed in 1970, and an access road, though I'm told it's not well maintained. He slides a photograph across the desk. It shows a weathered wooden building with a peaked roof, surrounded by dense forest. The structure looks solid but neglected, like something that's been waiting a very long time. The property taxes are current through this year. Reeves continues. Your grandmother had an account set up to pay them automatically. That account has now been depleted, so you'll be responsible for taxes going forward. They're approximately $1,800 annually. $1,800. Elena does the math in her head. That's money she doesn't have and won't have any time soon. Reeves seems to read her expression. There's also a sum of $2,500 in an escrow account, designated for property maintenance and initial expenses, that will be released to you upon taking possession. $2,500. More money than Elena has had at one time in 3 years. Enough for gas, food, maybe some repairs if the house needs them. You mentioned conditions. Elena says, yes. As I said, you must take possession within 30 days and reside on the property for 90 consecutive days. The property cannot be sold or transferred during that time. After 90 days, the property becomes yours outright with no restrictions. And if I don't meet the conditions, the property transfers to the North Cascades Conservation Trust. It would be preserved as wilderness, never developed. Elena looks at the photograph again. The house looks lonely in the forest, isolated, but it's shelter. It's a roof and walls and the possibility of heat. I'll do it, she says. Reeves nods and pulls out more paperwork. I'll need you to sign here and here. This acknowledges your acceptance of the inheritance and the attached conditions. And this is for the escrow account. Elena signs where he indicates. Her handwriting's shakier than she like. Reeves produces a large iron key, the kind that belongs to old locks, heavy and ornate. This is for the front door. The property is located off Forest Service Road 67, approximately 12 miles past the town of Skycomish. I have directions here. He slides another paper across the desk, this one with a hand-drawn map. Your grandmother also left this. He pulls an envelope from the folder, thick and sealed with actual wax, old-fashioned. Elena's name is written across the front in shaky handwriting. She specified that you should read this only after you've entered the property and spend at least one night there. I don't know what it contains. Elena takes the envelope carefully, feeling the weight of it. Is there anything else I should know? She asks. Reeves hesitates, and Elena sees something flicker across his face. Uncertainty maybe, or concern. Your grandmother was very specific about the timeline. He says, finally, she wanted you to have this property, but she also wanted you to understand something before you inherited it. I got the impression there was a reason the house has been sealed all these years. A reason she wanted you there before you learned whatever she has to tell you. A chill runs down Elena's spine. What kind of reason? I don't know. Reeves says, but if I may offer some advice, Ms. Voss, be careful. Property that's been sealed for 50 years has a way of holding secrets. And not all secrets are pleasant to uncover. Section 3. The first reveal mystery deepens. Elena drives east on Highway 2 with Ranger beside her and the iron key heavy in her jacket pocket. The envelope from her grandmother sits on the dashboard, sealed and waiting. Every few miles, Elena glances at it, wondering what's inside, but she keeps her promise. She won't open it until she's in the house. The November sky is gray and heavy with coming snow. She passes through the town of Skycomish, barely more than a few buildings and a gas station, and continues on Forest Service Road 67. The pavement gives way to gravel after 2 miles, then to dirt that's rutted and rough. The trees close in on either side, dense and dark. Douglas fir and western hemlock. Their branches heavy with moisture. The forest here feels old, untouched, like something from before roads and electricity and the modern world. She follows the hand-drawn map, counting turnoffs. The road gets worse with each mile, the car bouncing over ruts and rocks. The check engine light glows steadily, and Elena whispers a prayer to a God she's not sure she believes in anymore. Just get us there. Just hold together a little longer. After 40 minutes of climbing, she sees it. A gap in the trees marked by 2 stone pillars, both covered in moss and lichen. No gate, no sign, just the pillars standing like sentinels. She turns in. The driveway is barely visible, overgrown with ferns and salal. Saplings have sprouted in the tire tracks, some of them as thick as her wrist. Elena drives slowly, wincing as branches scrape the car's sides. Then the forest opens into a small clearing, and she sees the Carriage house. It's larger than she expected from the photograph. 2 stories, maybe 20 feet by 30, with a steeply pitched roof designed to shed snow. The siding is weathered cedar, gray with age, and the windows are small and high, like eyes that don't want to see too much. The front door is solid wood, dark with decades of weather, and across it hangs a chain with a padlock. Elena parks and sits for a moment, just looking. Ranger shifts beside her, whining softly. "I know, buddy," she says. "I feel it too. There's something about the house that feels wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but heavy, as if the building itself is holding its breath." She gets out slowly. The air smells of pine and damp earth. The clearing is silent, except for the whisper of wind through the trees. No birds, no sound of distant traffic. Nothing but wilderness for miles in every direction. Elena approaches the front door, pulling out the iron key. The padlock is modern, probably placed there by her grandmother's attorney to secure the property. She unlocks it and lets the chain fall away with a heavy rattle that sounds too loud in the silence. The key slides into the door's lock. It turns with resistance, the mechanism stiff from decades of disuse. Elena pushes, and the door swings inward with a groan of old hinges. Darkness waits inside. Elena pulls out her phone and turns on its flashlight. The beam cuts through dust-thick air, illuminating a single large room. She steps inside, Ranger close behind her, and the door swings shut on its own, making her jump. The space smells of age and abandonment, dust and wood and something else. Something organic and faintly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. Her flashlight beam sweeps across the room. There's a wood stove in one corner, a table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed frame against the far wall. Shelves along one side hold what look like preserves in mason jars, their contents dark and indistinguishable. A hand pump over a dry sink. A kerosene lamp on the table. Everything is covered in a thick layer of dust, undisturbed. No footprints. No signs that anyone has been here in decades. But in the center of the table, perfectly clean and dust-free, sits a photograph. Elena moves closer, her heart beating faster. The photograph shows a young woman, maybe early 20s, standing in front of this very house. She's wearing a simple dress, her dark hair pulled back, and she's holding a baby wrapped in white blankets. The woman's face is solemn, almost sad, but the baby appears healthy, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Elena picks up the photograph carefully. On the back, written in fading ink, is a date, June 1968. That would make the baby 56 years old now. Older than Elena. She sets the photograph down and looks around more carefully. Why would this one item be clean when everything else is covered in dust? Unless someone placed it here recently. But the attorney said no one had access to property in 50 years. Ranger whines and moves toward the back of the room, his nose low to the floor, tracking something Elena can't smell. He stops at what looks like a solid wall and scratches at the baseboard, whining more insistently. "What is it, buddy?" Elena moves closer and runs her hand along the wall where Ranger is focused. At first, she feels nothing but smooth wood. Then her fingers find a seam barely visible in the flashlight beam. Not part of the wall's construction, but a deliberate gap, a door, hidden in the wall. She presses along the seam, searching for a latch or handle. Her fingers find a small metal catch, flush with the wood. She presses it, and something clicks. A section of wall swings inward, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Elena's breath catches. A basement, or a cellar. Something built beneath the house, and hidden deliberately. Cold air rises from below, carrying that sweet decay smell more strongly now. Ranger backs away from the opening, his hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Whatever is down there, he doesn't like it. Elena doesn't like it either, but she can't not look, can't not investigate. This is why her grandmother wanted her here. This is why the house has been sealed for 50 years. She aims her flashlight down the stairs. They're steep and narrow, wooden planks that look solid enough. At the bottom, she can see part of a stone floor. "Stay here," she tells Ranger, though she's not sure he'll listen. She descends slowly, testing each step before putting her full weight on it. The wood creaks but holds. The air grows colder with each step down, and the smell grows stronger. Not quite rot, but something close, something preserved. At the bottom, Elena finds herself in a small cellar room, maybe 10 feet square, with stone walls and a low ceiling. Her flashlight beam sweeps across shelves holding more mason jars, old tools, what looks like a steamer trunk against one wall. And in the center of the room, taking up most of the floor space, is a wooden box. Not quite a coffin, but similar in shape, about 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, raised on wooden blocks to keep it off the stone floor. The box is sealed with metal bands and padlocks, 3 of them all rusted with age. Elena's hands shake as she moves closer. The sweet smell is coming from the box. Not strong enough to be a body, at least not a fresh one, but something organic that's been sealed away for a very long time. On top of the box, someone has placed a leather journal and a ring of small brass keys. Elena picks up the journal carefully. The leather is cracked with age, the pages yellowed. She opens the first page and finds handwriting she recognizes from the envelope upstairs. Her grandmother's handwriting. The entry is dated June 15, 1968. "She came to me in the night, desperate and bleeding. I did what I could, but it wasn't enough. The baby survived. The mother did not. I made a promise that night, a promise to keep them both safe, to never let them be separated, to make sure no one ever knew what happened in this place. I've kept that promise for 50 years. Now it's your turn, Elena. You're reading this because you found what I've hidden. You found her, and now you have to decide what to do with the truth." Elena flips through more pages, scanning entries. Her grandmother's account of that night in 1968. A young woman arriving at the Carriage house, pregnant and terrified, fleeing from someone or something. Margaret Holloway, a retired nurse, had done what she could, but the woman had died in childbirth, hemorrhaging that no amount of pressure could stop. The baby had lived, and Margaret had made a decision. She'd buried the mother here, in this cellar, in this sealed box. She'd taken the baby and found a home, a family who would raise it without questions. And then she'd sealed the Carriage house, locked it away, kept the secret for 50 years. Elena's mind reels. There's a body in this box. A woman who died in 1968, whose death was never reported, who was never buried properly, never mourned by family. And somewhere out there, there's a person who's 56 years old and doesn't know their mother is buried beneath a Carriage house in the Cascade Mountains. Elena looks at the brass keys in her hand. They're meant for the padlocks on the box. Her grandmother left them here deliberately. She wants Elena to open it, to see, to know. But does Elena want to know? Does she want to see what 50 years in a sealed box does to a human body? Ranger barks sharply from upstairs, breaking her paralysis. Then he barks again more urgently, not as warning bark, but as alert bark. Someone's here. Elena shoves a journal into her jacket pocket and hurries up the stairs, her heart hammering. She emerges into the main room just as she hears the sound of a vehicle approaching. Engine loud and the forest quiet. Through the small window, she sees a truck pulling into the clearing. Dark blue, expensive looking with 2 men inside. The truck stops and both doors open. The men who get out are dressed too well for the wilderness. Khakis and jackets that probably cost more than Elena's car. One is older, maybe 60, with silver hair. The other is younger, 40-ish, with the kind of build that comes from gym memberships. They walk toward the house with the confidence of people who own things, who expect to be obeyed. Elena moves to the door, her hand on Ranger's collar. He's growling now, low and steady. The older man knocks. 3 sharp raps. Elena opens the door, but doesn't step back. Ranger stands beside her, his growl intensifying. "Can I help you?" she asks, keeping her voice level. The older man smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "You must be Elena Voss. I'm James Cordell. This is my son, Michael. We own the property adjacent to this one. Heard there was activity up here, and thought we'd introduce ourselves." He extends his hand. Elena doesn't take it. "Nice to meet you," she says. "I'm just getting settled in." "So we heard." Michael Cordell says. His eyes move past her, trying to see into the house. Didn't realize Margaret's heir would actually take possession. Most people wouldn't want to deal with a place this remote. There's something in his tone. Not quite suspicion, but close. "It's exactly what I need," Elena says. James Cordell's smile widens slightly. "Well, that's wonderful. We've been keeping an eye on this property for years. Wanted to make sure it stayed protected. In fact, we've made offers in the past to purchase it. Turn it into conservation land. If you're interested in selling, we'd be happy to discuss terms." "I'm not interested," Elena says. The smile finally drops. "You might want to reconsider. This land is valuable, but maintaining a property this remote is expensive. Taxes, upkeep, access road maintenance. It adds up quickly. And winter's coming. You planning to stay here all winter?" "That's my business." Michael Cordell steps closer. Ranger's growl turns to a snarl, and the man stops. "You should control your dog," he says coldly. "He's controlled just fine. He doesn't like strangers on my property." "Your property?" James Cordell's eyebrows rise. "You've been here, an hour? And you already think you own it? There are conditions on the inheritance, aren't there? You have to live here for 90 days. That's a long time in the mountains in winter. A lot can happen." The implicit threat hangs in the air. Elena's fingers tighten on Ranger's collar. "I think you should leave now." The 2 men exchange glances. Then James Cordell pulls a business card from his pocket and sets it on the porch railing. "When you change your mind, and you will give us a call, we're prepared to make a very generous offer. More than this land is worth. Honestly, we're willing to overpay for the right property." He turns and walks back to the truck. Michael follows, looking back once with an expression Elena can't quite read. The truck pulls away, disappearing back down the overgrown driveway. Elena stands in the doorway for a long moment after they're gone, her mind racing. The Cordells knew about the inheritance conditions, knew she had to stay 90 days, and they'd come here less than an hour after she'd arrived. Either they'd been watching the property closely, or someone had told them she was coming. She closes and locks the door, then pulls out the envelope from her grandmother, the one she was supposed to wait to open, but the rules have changed. The Cordells' visit wasn't coincidental. There's something about this property they want, and it's not just a land. Elena breaks the wax seal and pulls out several pages of careful handwriting. "Dear Elena, if you're reading this, you found what I hid beneath the carriage house. You know about the woman who died here and the baby who lived. Now I need to tell you the rest. The woman's name was Sarah Cordell. She was 19 years old, pregnant, and terrified. She came to me because she had nowhere else to go. Her family had threatened to kill her if she didn't give up the baby. They were powerful people, rich, connected. They couldn't afford the scandal of an unwed mother in the family. Sarah refused to give up her child, so she ran. And she came to me because I'd helped women like her before, women who needed to disappear. I tried to save her. God knows I tried. But I wasn't a doctor, and the birth went wrong. She bled out in my arms, begging me to keep her baby safe. The Cordell family never knew Sarah died here. They still think she disappeared. They've been looking for her for 50 years, or at least looking for any evidence of what happened to her. That's why I sealed the house. Why I forbid anyone from entering. They've tried to buy this property a dozen times. Tried to pressure me, threaten me, buy me out. But I never told them what's here. The baby, Sarah's baby, I gave to a good family. They raised her without knowing where she came from. She's lived a full life, a good life. She doesn't know about Sarah. doesn't know about this place. But she deserves to know. And the Cordells deserve to answer for what they did. For driving a pregnant girl out into the wilderness. For threatening her life. For being the reason she's dead. You have a choice to make. Elena, you can open the box. You can report what you found. You can bring the truth to light. Or you can keep the secret like I did. Seal the house again. Walk away. I won't judge you either way. I've carried this burden for 50 years. I know how heavy it is. But I think you're stronger than I was. I think you're brave enough to do what I couldn't. The woman I gave Sarah's baby to lives in Bellingham. Her name is Catherine Morrison. She's 56 years old. She's a teacher. She has children of her own now, grandchildren. She's your cousin, Elena. Sarah was my daughter. I was too ashamed to admit it at the time, too caught up in maintaining appearances. But she was mine. That makes Catherine my granddaughter. And you and she are family. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you this while I was alive. Sorry I couldn't be braver. But maybe you can be brave for both of us. All my love, Margaret. Elena lowers the letter, her hands shaking. Sarah Cordell was her grandmother's daughter, which means Margaret's secret was even deeper than Elena understood. She hadn't just helped a stranger. She'd lost her own child. And the Cordells, James and Michael, who just stood on her porch making veiled threats, were Sarah's family. The family that had driven her away. The family responsible for her death. They want this property because somewhere, somehow, they know or suspect what's buried here. They want to erase the evidence. Want to make sure Sarah's death stays hidden forever. But Elena has the truth now. Has the journal, the letter, the location of Sarah's body. She has proof. And she has 90 days to decide what to do with it. Outside, the sky has grown darker. Snow is beginning to fall, light flakes drifting down through the trees. Winter is coming to the mountains. Elena looks at Ranger, who watches her with patient, trusting eyes. Looks like we're staying, buddy, she says quietly. Looks like we're going to see this through. She has nowhere else to go anyway. And maybe, just maybe, this is what she's supposed to do. Not just survive, but fight. Not just exist, but matter. For the first time in 3 years, Elena Voss has a purpose. Elena spends her first night in the carriage house without sleeping. She builds a fire in the wood stove, using kindling and logs she finds stacked under a tarp on the small porch, protected from decades of weather. The stove works miraculously, and heat begins to fill the single room. She spreads her sleeping bag on the narrow bed frame, testing it first to make sure it won't collapse. The mattress is long gone, rotted away or removed years ago, but the frame is solid. Ranger curls up on the floor beside her, his warm presence a comfort in the strange darkness. But Elena can't sleep, can't stop thinking about what's in the cellar below her. Sarah Cordell's body, sealed in that box for 50 years. A young woman who died terrified and alone, kept secret by a mother too afraid to tell the truth. And somewhere in Bellingham, Catherine Morrison lives her life not knowing her real mother is buried beneath a mountain carriage house, not knowing the Cordell family, her biological family, drove her mother to death. Elena sits up and pulls out Margaret's letter again, reading it by firelight. The handwriting is shaky in places, the letter of an old woman who knew she was dying. But the facts are clear. Sarah Cordell had been 19, pregnant, and threatened by her own family. The Cordells wanted her to give up the baby, probably to avoid scandal. When she refused, they made it clear she wasn't welcome, made it clear she was in danger if she stayed. So Sarah ran to the only person she thought could help, her mother, Margaret, who'd been estranged from the family, but who Sarah remembered as kind, someone who might understand. Margaret had tried to save her, had tried to deliver the baby safely, but something had gone wrong. Hemorrhaging, infection, complications that a retired nurse living in the wilderness couldn't treat. Sarah died. The baby lived. And Margaret made a choice that haunted her for 50 years. She hid the body and gave the baby to a family in Bellingham, telling them only that it was an adoption, that the mother couldn't care for the child. She never told them who the mother was, never told them about Sarah's death. And she sealed the carriage house, locked it away, and never returned. Until now, until she left it all to Elena. Why me? Elena thinks 100th time. Why not Catherine? Why not someone else? But she knows the answer. Catherine has a life, a family, stability. Exposing this truth would shatter all of that, would force her to confront the fact that her entire identity is built on a lie, that her biological mother died young and scared, that her biological family is the wealthy, powerful Cordell clan who wanted her dead before she was even born. Elena has nothing to lose, no reputation to protect, no comfortable life to preserve. She's already lost everything. That makes her dangerous. That makes her the perfect person to carry this secret into the light. Outside, the snow falls steadily now. Elena watches through the small window as white accumulates on the trees on the ground, transforming the forest into something clean and hushed. By morning, the driveway will be impassable without chains or four-wheel drive. She's trapped here until the snow stops, and she can dig out, which means she has time. Time to think, to plan, to figure out what to do next. She pulls out her phone and checks the signal. 1 bar, barely enough. She navigates to a search engine and types Cordell Family, Washington. The results load slowly. The first hit is a Wikipedia page for Cordell Industries, a timber and real estate development company founded in 1952 by William Cordell, currently run by his son, James Cordell, the same man who showed up at her door. Elena scrolls through the page. Cordell Industries is worth an estimated $450 million. They own timber rights across Washington and Oregon, plus commercial real estate developments in Seattle, Bellevue, and Tacoma. James Cordell, age 61, serves as CEO. His son, Michael Cordell, age 43, is chief operating officer. There's a family photo from a charity event. James and Michael in tuxedos, standing with 2 women. The caption identifies them as James's wife, Patricia, and Michael's wife, Amanda. Everyone is smiling, wealthy, powerful, respectable. Nothing in the photograph suggests they're the kind of people who would threaten a pregnant teenager, who would drive her out into the wilderness to die. But people hide darkness behind smiles. Elena knows that better than most. She searches for more. Sarah Cordell, 1968, missing. This search takes longer, but finally a result appears. A digitized newspaper article from the Everett Herald, dated August 1968. Cordell daughter still missing after 2 months. Sarah Cordell, 19, daughter of prominent businessman William Cordell, has been missing since June with no trace found despite extensive search efforts. Miss Cordell was last seen leaving her family's estate in Makulteo on June 10th. Her vehicle was found abandoned near the town of Skykomish 3 days later. Family spokesman James Cordell, Sarah's older brother, stated that the family is devastated and praying for Sarah's safe return. A $10,000 reward has been offered for information leading to her location. Sheriff's investigators say there are no signs of foul play, but the case remains active. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Skagit County Sheriff's Office. Elena reads the article twice. The dates align with Margaret's letter. Sarah disappeared in June. Her car was found near Skykomish, which is only about 15 miles from where Elena sits now. The family offered a reward, claimed to be devastated. But Margaret's letter tells a different story. They threatened Sarah, made it clear she wasn't safe. Which version is true? Or are both true in different ways? Maybe the family was devastated after she disappeared, even if they were the reason she ran. Elena searches for more articles, finds a few follow-ups over the next year. The search gradually wound down. In 1970, Sarah Cordell was declared legally dead. The family held a memorial service. And then, nothing. The story disappeared from public record. But the Cordells never forgot. Never stopped wondering what really happened to Sarah. And somehow, they suspect this property is connected. That's why they keep trying to buy it. Why they showed up within an hour of Elena's arrival. They know something. Or they suspect something. Elena's phone battery is dying. She plugs it into the portable charger she keeps in her car, one of her few electronic luxuries. Then she returns to the warmth of the fire in Margaret's journal. She reads through the entries from June 1968, the day surrounding Sarah's death. June 12, 1968. She arrived tonight, driving a car that barely made up the mountain road. She's 7 months pregnant, terrified, crying so hard she can barely speak. She says her family wants to take the baby. Give it away. Make her forget she was ever pregnant. She says her father told her if she didn't cooperate, she'd regret it. She's scared they'll hurt her, hurt the baby. I told her she could stay here as long as she needed. I told her she was safe. June 14th, 1968. Sarah's labor started this morning. Too early. The baby shouldn't come for another 2 months. She's in terrible pain. I'm doing what I can, but I'm not a doctor. I've delivered babies before, but this feels wrong. Something isn't right. June 15th, 1968. The baby came at dawn. A girl, tiny but breathing. Sarah held her for a few minutes, crying, saying she was sorry, saying she loved her. Then the bleeding started. I couldn't stop it. Tried everything I knew. Called for help, but there's no phone here. No way to get an ambulance up this mountain in time. By noon, Sarah was gone. The baby is sleeping in a box by the stove, wrapped in blankets, making little sounds. I don't know what to do. If I report Sarah's death, the Cordells will take the baby. We'll do exactly what Sarah was running from. But if I don't report it, I'm hiding a death. Hiding evidence. Breaking every law there is. June 16th, 1968. I made my decision. I called a friend in Bellingham, a woman I trust. She and her husband have been trying to have children for years without success. They'll take the baby, raise her as their own, love her the way Sarah would have wanted. I'll bury Sarah here, under the house. I'll seal the carriage house and never come back. The Cordells will never know what happened. They'll search and wonder and eventually move on. It's not justice, but it's the only way to protect Sarah's baby. The only way to honor what she wanted. Elena closes a journal, her throat tight. Margaret had been trying to protect the baby, had made an impossible choice and lived with the guilt for 50 years. But in protecting Catherine, she left Sarah's death uninvestigated, left her buried in secret, left the Cordells unpunished for whatever role they played in her death. And now it's Elena's turn to make impossible choices. Outside, the snow has stopped. Dawn light filters through the trees, pale and cold. Elena has been awake all night, but she doesn't feel tired. Her mind is too active, working through possibilities. She needs to know more, needs to understand what really happened to Sarah. Was it just the family's threats that drove her away, or was there something more? And why are the Cordells so interested in this property specifically? Elena stands and stretches, her body stiff from sitting. Ranger raises his head, watching her. We need to go into town, she tells him. Need to do some research. The nearest library is in Skycomish, assuming the tiny town has won. If not, she'll drive to Monroe or even Everett. She needs internet access, public records, newspaper archives. She needs to find out everything she can about the Cordell family and what happened in 1968. But first, she needs to make the house more livable. She can't stay here 90 days without basic supplies. Elena uses some of the money from the escrow account, now deposited in her nearly empty bank account, to buy essentials. At a hardware store in Skycomish, she purchases a space heater, extension cords, a battery-powered lantern, and basic tools. At a grocery store, she buys food for herself and Ranger, cheap but enough to last a couple of weeks. The clerk at the grocery store eyes her worn jacket, an old car with the kind of disdain Elena has learned to ignore. You staying around here? The woman asks, not quite friendly. Up on Forest Service Road 67, Elena says, the old Holloway property. The clerk's expression changes. Not quite fear, but something close. That place has been closed up for years. You're actually living there. Inherited it from my grandmother. Huh. The clerk bags her groceries with more force than necessary. Well, good luck with that. Place has a reputation. What kind of reputation? The woman shrugs. Just stories. You know how people talk. Old house in the woods. Nobody's been there in decades. People say it's cursed or haunted or some nonsense. Personally, I think it's just that the Cordells want it and get pissy when they can't buy everything they want. Elena's attention sharpens. The Cordells have tried to buy it? Oh, yeah, for years. Old lady Holloway wouldn't sell, no matter how much they offered. Heard they went as high as $500,000 for that property, which is crazy money for 18 acres this far from anything. $500,000. For a remote property with a rundown carriage house and no amenities. Why would they pay so much? Elena asks carefully. The clerk shrugs again. Beats me. Maybe timber rights. Maybe they just want to control all the land around theirs. The Cordells own about 3,000 acres on the other side of that ridge. They're always buying up adjacent properties, consolidating. Elena thanks her and loads the groceries into her car. Ranger sits in the passenger seat, patient as always. $500,000. The Cordells had offered her grandmother $500,000 for property that's probably worth a tenth of that on the open market, which means there's something here they want, something valuable. Elena drives to the tiny Skycomish library, a single room attached to the town hall. Inside, an elderly librarian looks up from her desk with surprise. Can I help you? I need to use a computer, if you have one available. And I'm looking for old newspaper records, anything from the late 1960s. The librarian gestures to an ancient desktop computer in the corner. That works, barely. As for newspapers, we got the Ever Herald on microfiche from 1950 to 1990. Let me show you how to use the reader. Elena spent the next 3 hours searching. She finds articles about Sarah's disappearance that she'd already seen on her phone, plus a few more. Photos of the family, looking appropriately grief-stricken. Quotes from William Cordell about hoping for his daughter's safe return. But she also finds other articles. Stories about Cordell Industries' rapid expansion in the 1960s, their acquisition of timber rights across the state, and one article from 1967 that makes her pause. Cordell Industries strikes gold. Iron, actually. Cordell Industries announced today that mineral surveys of their Skycomish County timber holdings have revealed significant iron ore deposits. Company spokesman James Cordell stated that preliminary estimates suggest the deposits could be worth tens of millions if extracted. However, environmental regulations and access issues make immediate mining unlikely. We're exploring our options, Cordell said, but we're primarily a timber company. Mining would represent a significant departure from our core business. Elena read the article 3 times. Mineral rights. Iron or deposits worth tens of millions. And the Cordell property is adjacent to Margaret's 18 acres. What if the mineral deposits don't stop at the property line? What if they extend onto Margaret's land? If the Cordells could acquire Margaret's property, they'd control the access, could potentially extract minerals worth. Elena's mind does rough math. The article said tens of millions in 1967. With inflation and increased mineral values, that could easily be hundreds of millions today. Maybe even close to the $95 million her grandmother had hinted at in the property documents. Elena's hands are shaking as she prints the article. This is why the Cordells want the property. Not because Sarah's buried there. They might not even know that. They want it because it sits on mineral deposits they've known about for over 50 years, but couldn't access without controlling the land. Margaret refused to sell, kept them blocked for decades. And now Elena owns the only piece of property standing between the Cordells and a fortune. She gathers her printouts and heads back to the car. But as she steps outside, she sees a familiar dark blue truck parked across the street. Michael Cordell leans against it, watching her. Elena's first instinct is to get in her car and drive away. But something stops her. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's the fact that she spent 3 years running from everything, and she's tired of running. She walks across the street toward him, her heart pounding but her stride steady. Michael straightens as she approaches. Up close, he looks less polished than he had at the carriage house. There are shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw. "Ms. Voss," he says, "doing some research? Is there a reason you're following me?" Elena keeps her voice level, not quite confrontational, but not friendly either. "Following you? No. I was in town on business and happened to see your car." He pauses. "But since we're both here, maybe we could talk. There's a coffee shop around the corner. Can I buy you a cup?" Elena should say no, should get in her car and leave. But she's curious. Wants to know what he'll say when his father isn't standing beside him. Fine, she says, but my dog comes with me. Michael glances at Ranger, who's watching him through the car window with alert suspicion. Of course. The coffee shop is small and warm, with 3 tables and a counter. Michael orders 2 coffees and pays before Elena can object. They sit at the table farthest in the counter, Ranger lying at Elena's feet. I want to apologize for yesterday, Michael says. My father can be intense. He's been trying to acquire your property for decades. He doesn't like hearing no. I gathered that. Michael wraps his hands around his coffee cup. I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Voss. We need that land. Not want, need. It's essential to a development plan we've been working on for years. What kind of development? He hesitates. We're looking at mining operations. There are mineral deposits in the area that would be extremely valuable if extracted properly. On my land. Elena asks, though she already knows the answer. The deposits extend across both properties. We have rights to extract on our side, but the geology makes it impractical without access from your side. The terrain, the environmental regulations, the logistics, they all point to your property being essential for any extraction to be economically viable. Elena sips her coffee, saying nothing. Michael leans forward. I know $500,000 sounds like a lot of money, but these deposits are worth significantly more. If you're willing to sell, we'd go higher, much higher, $1 million, maybe more, $1 million, more money than Elena has ever imagined having. What if I don't want to sell? She asks quietly. Then you'd be making a mistake. Michael's tone is still polite, but there's steel underneath. That property is isolated, difficult to maintain, expensive to keep, and you're required to live there for 90 days to inherit. Winter in the mountains is dangerous for someone who's... He trails off. Who's what? Homeless? Poor? Unprepared? Elena finishes for him. He has the grace to look uncomfortable. I just mean it's not an easy place to survive, especially alone. I'm not alone. I have Ranger. A dog won't help if you get snowed in, if your car breaks down, if you have a medical emergency and can't get help. He pauses. I'm trying to be helpful here. Ms. Voss, we're offering you life-changing money. Enough to get back on your feet, find a real home, have security. Why would you refuse that? Because the moment she sells, Sarah's body becomes their problem to hide or expose as they see fit. Because she doesn't trust them. Because there's something they're not telling her. I'll think about it, Elena says, though she has no intention of selling. Michael slides a business card across the table. Call me if you change your mind. The offer stands. But it won't stand forever. We have other options for acquiring property if you're unwilling to negotiate. There's a threat, polite but clear. Elena stands. Thanks for the coffee. She leaves before he can respond. Ranger close beside her. Section 5. The deeper secret, second layer revelation. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible mountain stories like this one. Back at the carriage house, Elena unpacks her supplies and sets up the space heater. With heat and light, the single room becomes almost comfortable. She makes a simple dinner, canned soup and bread, and feeds Ranger. Then she returns to the cellar. She's been avoiding it, avoiding the reality of what's down there, but she can't avoid it forever. If she's going to understand what happened, she needs to see everything. She descends the steep stairs with her flashlight and the battery-powered lantern. The cellar smells the same, that sweet decay scent that makes her stomach turn. But she forces herself to approach the wooden box. The brass keys are still there, lying on top, 3 of them for the 3 padlocks. Elena picks them up. Her hands are remarkably steady. She fits the first key into the first padlock. It turns with resistance. The mechanism stiff. The lock clicks open and falls away. The second key, the second lock. Another click. The third key. The final lock. Elena removes all 3 and sets them aside. Then she lifts the metal bands that hold the box closed. The lid is heavy, warped with age. She has to use both hands to lift it, straining against decades of settling wood. It opens. Inside, wrapped in what was once white fabric but is now yellowed and stained, is a body. Elena's breath catches. She prepared herself, thought she was ready, but seeing actual human remains, even ones this old, sends a wave of nausea through her. The fabric has preserved the body better than she expected. She can see the shape of a person, small and slight. A young woman, just as Margaret described. But there's something else in the box. Papers protected by plastic sheeting. And underneath those, something that glints in the flashlight beam. Elena carefully moves the plastic aside and finds documents. Legal papers. A birth certificate for baby girl Cordell, dated June 15, 1968. Mother, Sarah Cordell. Father, unknown. Adoption papers, showing the transfer of custody to Thomas and Helen Morrison of Bellingham, Washington. The baby's new name, Catherine Morrison. And beneath those, a diary. Sarah's diary. Elena lifts it out carefully. The leather cover is intact, the pages yellow but readable. She carries it upstairs to the warmth and light of the main room, leaving the cellar door open because somehow sealing again feels wrong now. Ranger watches as she settles at the table and opens a diary to the first page. Sarah's handwriting is young, looping, the kind of script they taught in schools in the 1960s. January 3rd, 1968. I think I'm pregnant. I'm terrified to tell anyone. Robert will be furious. Father will disown me. Mother will cry and say I've ruined everything. I don't know what to do. January 20th, 1968, I told Robert. He says it's not his problem. Says I should take care of it. And if I don't, he'll make sure everyone knows what kind of girl I am. I thought he loved me. I thought we were going to get married after he graduated. I was so stupid. February 14th, 1968, I told Mother. She slapped me, actually slapped me across the face, and called me a whore. She says Father can't know. Says we'll figure something out. But her eyes were cold when she said it. I'm scared. March 1st, 1968, they're sending me away to a home for unwed mothers in California. They'll take the baby when it's born, put it up for adoption, and I'll come home and pretend none of this happened. Father says if I refuse, I'm not welcome in this family. He says I brought shame on the Cordell name. Says if I tell anyone who the father is, Robert is his business partner's son, he'll make sure I regret it. Elena reads faster, her heart breaking for this young woman. April 10th, 1968. I'm not going to California. I can't let them take my baby. I can't pretend she doesn't exist. I know it's a she. I can feel it. I've been saving money for my allowance. I have $300. Enough to run. May 20th, 1968. Robert found out I'm still pregnant. Still planning to keep the baby. He came to the house yesterday and threatened me. Said if I don't get rid of it, something bad will happen. He grabbed my arm so hard he left bruises. Father heard everything and didn't stop him. Just stood there and watched. I'm not safe here. June 9th, 1968. I'm leaving tonight. I found a letter from a woman named Margaret Halloway in Mother's Old Things. She's my grandmother, though Mother never talks about her. They had some kind of falling out years ago. But the letter was kind, and it mentioned she lived in the mountains, away from everything. I think she'll help me. I have to believe someone will help me. The final entry is dated June 10th, 1968. June 10th, 1968. I'm driving to the mountains. I'm 7 months pregnant and terrified, but I'm also hopeful. Maybe I can start over. Maybe my baby and I can have a life together, away from the Cordells and their demands and their cruelty. I'm going to find Margaret. She's my last hope. The diary ends there. Elena closes it and sits in silence. Sarah had been running from more than just family pressure. She'd been running from threats, from violence, from a young man who made it clear she and her baby weren't safe. Robert, the business partner's son. Elena pulls out her phone and searches. Cordell Industries business partners, 1968. It takes some digging, but she finds it. An old business filing from 1967 showing the officers of Cordell Industries. William Cordell, CEO. James Cordell, vice president, and Robert Manning, director of operations. Manning, the business partner, wasn't a separate company. It was a family partnership. Robert Manning had married into the Cordell family, or worked for them, and his son had gotten Sarah pregnant. Elena searches for Robert Manning and finds an obituary from 2003. Robert Manning Jr. died at age 56 from a heart attack. Survived by his father, Robert Manning Sr., and his wife, Linda. No mention of children, but there had been a child, Catherine Morrison, living in Bellingham, who has no idea her biological father was a man who threatened her mother, who probably contributed to her mother's death. Elena's head is spinning. The layers of secrets, the complexity of it all. Sarah had died running from violence and threats. Margaret had hidden her death to protect Catherine. And the Cordells have spent 50 years not knowing what happened, but desperately wanting this property. For the minerals, for the money, not because they care about Sarah. She doubts they ever really did. Ranger suddenly stands, his ears pricked forward. He moves to the window and growls low in his chest. Elena joins him and peers out into the darkness. At first she sees nothing, then movement, lights flickering through the trees. Someone is out there. She kills a lantern and the space heater, plunging the room into darkness lit only by the dying fire in the wood stove. Her eyes adjust slowly. The lights are closer now. Flashlights, at least 2 of them, moving through the forest toward the Carriage house. Elena's heart hammers. She pulls out her phone and checks the signal. No bars. The weather or the remote location, or both, have killed her connection. She can't call for help. The lights stop at the edge of the clearing. 2 figures stand there, just visible in the reflected glow of their flashlights. They're not approaching, just watching. Waiting. Elena feels a chill that has nothing to do with the cold. This is a message. We know you're here. We know you're alone. We can come whenever we want. She stands at the window with Ranger growling beside her and stares back at the watching lights, refusing to hide, refusing to show fear. After 10 minutes, the lights turn and disappear back into the forest. But Elena knows they'll be back. The Cordells are escalating, and she's trapped here for 89 more days. Section 6. The threat escalates external pressure. Morning comes cold and bright. Elena wakes stiff in unrest, having dozed in a chair by the wood stove rather than lying down. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even after the lights in the forest disappeared. Ranger paces the room, restless and alert. He knows something is wrong. Elena opens the door carefully, checking the clearing for any sign of the intruders. At first, she sees nothing unusual. Then her eyes catch something at the edge of the tree line, a stake driven into the ground, with a piece of paper attached. She tells Ranger to stay and walks across the clearing, her boots crunching through the thin layer of snow that fell overnight. The paper is a notice, official-looking, with a Skagit County seal at the top. Notice of environmental assessment. The property located at Forest Service Road 67, parcel hashtag 45-789-023, has been identified for mandatory environmental assessment pursuant to County Ordinance 47.2. All structures must be vacated during the assessment period, estimated 30 to 45 days. Occupancy during assessment is prohibited and subject to fines up to $5,000 per day. Assessment will commence November 20th. Today is November 17th. They're giving her 3 days. Elena tears the notice off the stake and marches back inside. This is harassment, pure and simple. There's no legitimate environmental concern. The Cordells are using their influence, their connections, to force her out. If she leaves, even for the mandated assessment period, she'll violate the terms of Margaret's will. She has to reside here for 90 consecutive days. If she's gone for even 1 day, the property goes to the Conservation Trust, which the Cordells could then buy or negotiate access with. She pulls out her phone. Still no signal. She'll have to drive into town to make calls. But first, she needs to secure the evidence. The diary, the birth certificate, the adoption papers, Margaret's journal. All of it needs to be somewhere safe. Somewhere the Cordells can't reach it if they decide to break in while she's gone. Elena finds a waterproof bag in her car's emergency kit and carefully packs all the documents inside. Then she takes Ranger and walks in the forest, moving away from the driveway and clearing, going deeper into the woods until she finds a distinctive tree, a massive cedar with a lightning scar down one side. She buries the bag at the base of the tree, marking the spot with rocks arranged in a pattern she'll remember. If anything happens to her, if the Cordells somehow get rid of her, at least the evidence will survive. Then she drives to town. The county environmental office is closed when she arrives. Of course it is. Saturday. She'll have to wait until Monday to challenge the assessment notice. But she can't wait for everything. She finds a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and uses her laptop, one of the few possessions she's kept from her old life, to search for legal aid organizations. She finds one in Everett that specializes in property rights. She calls and gets voicemail, leaves a message explaining the situation. Then she searches for Catherine Morrison in Bellingham. There are 3 listings, but only one is the right age. Catherine Morrison, 56, listed as a teacher at Bellingham High School. Elena stares at the phone number on the screen. She should call, should tell Catherine the truth. But what would she say? Hi, you don't know me, but I'm your cousin. Your biological mother was murdered by her family and is buried under a carriage house in the mountains. Also, you're heir to a fortune if we can prove the Cordells knew about the mineral rights on land that should have been Sarah's. It sounds insane. It is insane. But it's also true. Elena takes a breath and dials before she can talk herself out of it. The phone rings 3 times. Then a woman's voice, warm and slightly harried. Hello? Is this Catherine Morrison? Yes, who's calling? Elena's throat tightens. My name is Elena Voss. I'm calling about something that's going to sound strange, but I promise it's important. It's about your birth mother. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, I was adopted. My birth mother's identity was sealed. Her name was Sarah Cordell. She died in June 1968, 3 days after you were born. She was 19 years old. More silence. Elena can hear Catherine breathing, can almost feel her struggling with whether to hang up. How do you know this? Catherine asks finally. Because Sarah was my grandmother's daughter, Margaret Halloway. She's the one who arranged your adoption, and she left me documentation, journals, everything. I know this is a shock. I know you probably don't believe me, but I can prove it. Why are you calling me now? Why after all these years? Because there are people who want to bury the truth, literally, and I need help fighting them. Sarah deserves justice. You deserve to know where you came from. And there's an inheritance involved, mineral rights worth potentially millions, that should have been Sarah's and now should be yours. Catherine's breath catches. I can't process this. I need time. I understand, but I don't have much time. I'm being pressured to leave the property where Sarah is buried. If I go, the evidence might disappear. The people threatening me have money and power and connections. The Cordells, Catherine says quietly. You know about them? I know the name. My mother, my adoptive mother, Helen. She mentioned it once when I was asking about my birth family. She said my biological family was wealthy and dangerous, and I was better off not knowing. She made me promise never to search for them. Your adoptive mother was trying to protect you, but Sarah wanted you to know the truth. That's why she kept a diary, why she documented everything. She loved you. She died trying to protect you. Catherine is crying now. Soft sobs she's trying to muffle. I need to see the proof. I need to see it with my own eyes. Can you come to the property? I'm about 2 hours from Bellingham. I teach Monday through Friday. I could come Sunday. Tomorrow is perfect. I'll text you directions. They exchange numbers and end the call. Elena sits in the coffee shop, shaken with adrenaline and relief. She's not alone in this anymore. Catherine has a right to the truth, and together they'll be stronger. But that still leaves the environmental assessment notice and the 3 days until she's supposed to vacate the property. Elena calls the legal aid number again. This time, someone answers. Northwest Legal Aid, this is Cynthia. Elena explains the situation as clearly as she can. The inheritance, the 90-day occupancy requirement, the sudden environmental assessment notice that would force her to leave. Cynthia listens without interrupting. When Elena finishes, she says, "That's textbook harassment. Environmental assessments require notice, but they also require legitimate environmental concerns. What's the stated reason for the assessment?" Elena pulls out the notice and reads the fine print. It says, "Potential contamination from historic septic systems and evaluation of wetland boundaries." "Do you have a septic system?" "Yes, installed in 1970, according to my attorney." "And it's been functioning properly?" "As far as I know. I've only been here a few days." "Then this is bogus. Someone filed a complaint to trigger the assessment, and someone in the county office fast-tracked it without proper procedure. I can file an injunction to stop the assessment pending a hearing, but it'll take a few days to get before a judge. I only have 3 days. I can file for an emergency injunction Monday morning. That would freeze the assessment until we can argue the case. In the meantime, don't leave the property. If you're there when they show up for the assessment, they can't force you out. They can fine you, but you can challenge those fines later. What if they send police? They won't. This is a civil, not criminal. Worst case, they issue citations. But if you're living there legitimately, if the septic system isn't actually failing, they have no grounds to remove you. Elena feels some of the tension ease. "Thank you. What I owe you. We work on a sliding scale based on income. Given what you've told me about your situation, your fee is 0. We'll handle this pro bono." Elena could cry with relief. "Thank you. Really, thank you. One more thing," Cynthia says. "Document everything. Every interaction with county officials. Every threat, every notice. Take photos, save paperwork, keep records. If this goes to court, documentation will be crucial." Elena promises to do exactly that and ends the call feeling, for the first time in days, like she has some control over the situation. She returns to the Carriage house just before dark. The clearing is empty, peaceful, but Elena doesn't trust the peace. She checks the perimeter, looking for signs of tampering or surveillance. Ranger finds it first. A small camera, battery-powered, attached to a tree and pointed at the front door of the Carriage house. Someone is watching her, documenting when she comes and goes. Elena leaves the camera in place but positions herself so her face isn't visible when she enters or exits the house. Let them watch. Let them see that she's not leaving. That night, she builds up the fire and makes a real meal, pasta with canned sauce, the first hot dinner she's had in days that isn't soup. She feeds Ranger and then sits at the table with Margaret's journal, reading the later entries. Margaret had lived with guilt for 50 years, but she'd also lived with determination. She'd refused every offer from the Cordells, had paid the property taxes religiously, even when money was tight, had kept the Carriage house sealed, so no one could disturb Sarah's resting place. In the final entries, written just months before her death, Margaret's handwriting is shaky, but her message is clear. "I'm dying. The cancer is everywhere now. The doctors say I have weeks, maybe a month. I've arranged everything. Elena will inherit the property. I've left her all the documentation, all the proof. She's stronger than I was, braver than I was. She'll do what I couldn't. She'll tell the truth. Sarah deserves that. Catherine deserves that. And the Cordells deserve to answer for what they did." Elena closes the journal. Outside, full darkness has fallen. The forest is silent except for the wind in the trees and the occasional crack of a branch breaking under the weight of snow. She's alone on a mountain, sitting on top of a 50-year-old murder cover-up, being watched and harassed by people with millions of dollars and the local government apparently in their pocket. She should be terrified, but instead, she feels something she hasn't felt in 3 years. She feels like she matters, like what she does makes a difference. Tomorrow, Catherine will arrive. Together, they'll figure out the next steps, and the Cordells can watch all they want. Elena isn't going anywhere. Catherine Morrison arrives Sunday afternoon, driving a sensible Subaru up the rutted mountain road. Elena watches from the window as a woman, who looks achingly like the photograph of Sarah steps out of the car. She's 56 but could pass for younger. Dark hair streaked with gray, Sarah's delicate bone structure, the same eyes, brown and cautious but kind. She's dressed practically in hiking boots and a down jacket, and she stands at the edge of the clearing for a long moment, just staring at the Carriage house. Elena opens the door. Catherine? The woman turns, and Elena sees tears on her cheeks. I didn't believe it, Catherine says quietly. Not really, but being here, I can feel it. Something happened here. Come inside. It's warmer. Catherine follows her in, glancing around the simple room. Ranger approaches carefully, tail wagging low, and Catherine kneels to greet him. I brought coffee, she says, pulling a thermos from her bag. And I printed everything I could find about the Cordells. I couldn't sleep last night. I just kept researching. They sit at the table, and Elena shows her everything. Margaret's journal, Sarah's diary, the birth certificate and adoption papers, the newspaper articles about Sarah's disappearance. Catherine reads with shaking hands, tears falling freely now. When she reaches Sarah's final diary entry, she closes her eyes. She was running to save me, Catherine whispers. She died protecting me. She loved you. That's the one thing that's clear in everything she wrote. Catherine opens her eyes. The Cordells, my biological family, they threatened her, drove her out, and they've gotten away with it for 50 years. Not anymore, Elena says. Not if we stop them. Catherine's jaw sets with sudden determination. What do we need to do? Elena explains the situation. The mineral rights worth an estimated $95 million. The environmental assessment meant to force her out. The surveillance, the harassment, the Cordells' desperation to acquire property. If we expose what happened to Sarah, Elena says, if we prove the Cordells threaten her and cause her death, everything changes. The mineral rights on this property should have passed to Sarah when her father died, then to you as her heir. The Cordells have been extracting minerals from adjacent land for decades, probably crossing onto this property illegally. You could be entitled to damages, royalties, everything. Catherine absorbs this. You're talking about suing them. I'm talking about justice. For Sarah, for you, for everyone they've hurt. They're worth hundreds of millions. They have lawyers, influence, connections. And we have the truth. Elena meets her eyes. I've been powerless for 3 years. Invisible. I've survived by staying quiet and not making waves. But I'm done with that. Your mother died because powerful people decided she didn't matter. I won't let them keep pretending that. Catherine is quiet for a moment. Then she pulls out her phone. My husband is an attorney. Civil litigation. He specializes in corporate malfeasance. I didn't tell him why I was coming here today, but I think it's time. She makes the call, stepping outside for privacy. Through the window, Elena watches her pace, gesturing, occasionally wiping her eyes. 15 minutes later, Catherine comes back in. David, my husband, he's driving down with his partner. They'll be here in 2 hours. He says if what we have is as solid as it sounds, this could be the biggest case of his career. Elena feels something loosen in her chest. They're building an army. Small but real. There's something else you need to see. Elena says, your mother is buried here, in the cellar. Catherine goes very still. Here? In this building? Elena nods. Margaret couldn't risk the Cordells finding her. Couldn't risk them taking you. So she buried Sarah here and sealed the house. Can I see her? Elena leads her down to the cellar, shows her the wooden box, now open, the remains wrapped in yellowed fabric. Catherine kneels beside it, reaching out but not quite touching. Hi, Mom, she whispers. I'm sorry it took so long to find you. She stays there for a long time while Elena waits upstairs, giving her privacy for a grief 56 years delayed. When Catherine's husband David arrives with his law partner, Elena makes more coffee and they spread everything across the table. Documents, journals, newspaper clippings, Elena's notes about the mineral rights. David's chin is intense and sharp, asking questions faster than Elena can answer them. His partner, a woman named Rebecca Oakes, photographs every document with methodical precision. This is extraordinary. David says finally, a death covered up for 50 years, mineral rights worth nearly $100 million, a family using government connections to harass the current property owner. It's massive. Can we prove it? Catherine asks. We can prove Sarah died here. We can prove the Cordells threatened her based on her diary. We can prove they've been trying to acquire this property for decades despite having no legitimate use for it. We can prove the mineral rights extend onto this land. David taps the geological survey Elena printed. What we need is proof they knew about the minerals before Sarah died. If they knew, and they knew Sarah would inherit, and they drove her away to prevent that, that's conspiracy and potentially wrongful death. How do we prove they knew? Elena asks. Rebecca looks up from photographing documents, corporate records. If Cordell Industries commissioned geological surveys in the 60s, those records exist somewhere. We subpoena them. They'll fight that, David says. They'll tie us up in court for months. Not if we go public first, Rebecca counters. If we hold a press conference, show the diary, show the death certificate, tell Sarah's story, the Cordells will be under pressure to settle. They can't afford a public relations disaster of this magnitude. Catherine looks at Elena. It's your decision. This is your property, your inheritance. Elena thinks about the last 3 years. Sleeping in her car, being invisible, being dismissed and discounted because she had no money, no status, no power. We go public, she says. Sarah deserves people to know what happened to her. David grins. I was hoping you'd say that. Section 8. The victory resolution achieved. Monday morning. Cynthia from Northwest Legal Aid files the emergency injunction blocking the environmental assessment. By noon, a judge has granted a temporary restraining order. The county can't proceed with the assessment until a full hearing. That afternoon, David and Rebecca hold a press conference at a Seattle hotel. They invite every major media outlet in the state. Elena and Catherine stand together as David presents the evidence. Sarah's diary projected on a screen, the birth certificate, photographs of the Carriage house, Margaret's journal entries. 56 years ago, David says, a young woman named Sarah Cordell died in the Cascade Mountains while fleeing her family. She was 19 years old and 7 months pregnant. Her family had threatened her, demanded she give up her child, and when she refused, she ran for her life. She died giving birth in a remote carriage house, and her death was never reported. Her body was buried in secret. Her family never knew what happened to her, or they chose not to know. He pauses, letting the weight of it settle. The woman who buried Sarah did so to protect Sarah's infant daughter, the daughter the Cordell family wanted to take away. That baby girl was adopted by a loving family and grew up safe. She became a teacher. She had children and grandchildren of her own. She had a good life. Catherine wipes her eyes. But Sarah's family, the Cordells of Cordell Industries, spent 50 years trying to acquire property where Sarah died. Not because they cared about their daughter, but because the land sits on mineral deposits worth an estimated $95 million. Deposits that should have passed to Sarah when her father died. Deposits that should now belong to her daughter. The room erupts with questions from reporters. David holds up a hand. We're filing a wrongful death suit against the Cordell family and a claim for mineral rights on behalf of Catherine Morrison, Sarah's daughter. We believe the evidence will show the Cordells knew about these mineral deposits before Sarah died. They drove her away to prevent her from ever inheriting them. They profited from her death for half a century. A reporter shouts, Has the family responded? Not yet, but I imagine it will soon. The press conference runs another 30 minutes. Reporters ask about the surveillance, the environmental assessment, the harassment Elena has faced. By the time it ends, every news outlet in Washington is running the story. Elena watches the coverage from the Carriage house that evening, her face on television, looking weathered but determined. Catherine beside her, dignified in her grief. The story of Sarah Cordell, the young woman who died alone in the mountains. Her phone, now with a signal booster David installed, starts ringing. Reporters wanting interviews. Advocacy groups offering support. Complete strangers sending messages of encouragement. She ignores most of it, but one call she takes. Mom! It's David, her son. She hasn't heard from him in 6 weeks. Hi, honey. I just saw the news. You're living in the mountains? You inherited property? Why didn't you tell me? It's complicated. Mom, I'm sorry. His voice breaks. I'm sorry I let you live in your car for 3 years. I should have tried harder. Should have. You have your own life, Elena says gently. I made my choices. But you were homeless. You were alone. And you still fought for this woman you never met. You're amazing, Mom. I should have seen that before. They talk for an hour. Really talk, the way they haven't since Michael died. David offers to send money, to help with legal fees, to do anything she needs. I'm okay now, Elena tells him. I have a home. I have a purpose. I'm okay. After the call, she sits with Ranger and watches the fire. For the first time in years, she feels something like peace. The Cordells' response comes Tuesday morning. A press release claiming Sarah's death was a tragic accident they knew nothing about, expressing sympathy for Catherine, denying any wrongdoing. But by Tuesday afternoon, investigative reporters have found the smoking gun, a geological survey commissioned by Cordell Industries in 1966, 2 years before Sarah died, showing detailed mineral deposits across both the Cordell property and the adjacent Halloway property. The survey recommended acquiring the Halloway property by any means necessary to maximize extraction profits. William Cordell, Sarah's father, had signed off on the survey. He knew, 2 years before Sarah got pregnant, before she ran, he knew the property was worth a fortune. And when Sarah became a liability, unmarried, pregnant, refusing to cooperate, he had motive to drive her away. The story explodes. National news picks it up. Cable networks run segments on family dynasties and corporate greed. Social media erupts with outrage. James Cordell resigns as CEO of Cordell Industries Wednesday morning. Michael Cordell follows hours later. By Thursday, their attorneys are calling David Chun with settlement offers. The final negotiation happens Friday afternoon. David, Rebecca, Catherine, and Elena sit in a conference room in downtown Seattle. Across from them, the Cordells' legal team, 5 lawyers in expensive suits. The lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Douglas Warren, speaks first. My clients want to resolve this matter quietly and quickly. We're prepared to offer Ms. Morrison $2 million in exchange for all mineral rights to the Halloway property and a signed non-disclosure agreement. No, Catherine says before David can respond. Warren blinks. I'm sorry. No, my mother died because your clients valued money over her life. I'm not going to take their money and stay quiet. $3 million, Warren counters. You're not listening, David says calmly. My client isn't interested in a buyout. We want what's rightfully hers. Full mineral rights. An accounting of all minerals extracted from the Halloway property over the past 50 years. Damages for wrongful death. And a public acknowledgement of what the Cordell family did. Warren's jaw tightens. That's not realistic. Then we'll see you in court. And discovery is going to be fascinating. Every corporate document, every surveyor's report, every internal memo, all of it public record. The Cordells team huddled. Whispered conversations. Warren makes a call, steps out of the room. He returns 20 minutes later. Full mineral rights to the Halloway property, valued at $95 million. $15 million in damages for wrongful death and harassment, and a public statement acknowledging that Sarah Cordell's death could have been prevented if the family had provided support rather than threats. David looks at Catherine. She looks at Elena. What do you think? Catherine asks. Elena thinks about Sarah, 19 and terrified, running into the mountains. Thinks about Margaret, carrying guilt for 50 years. Thinks about her own 3 years of invisibility. I think Sarah deserves the acknowledgement, Elena says, and you deserve the inheritance. Catherine turns to David. We accept. The settlement is signed. Catherine Morrison becomes one of the wealthiest women in Washington state overnight. The Cordell family issues a public statement taking responsibility for failing Sarah when she needed the most. It's not perfect justice, but it's something. Section 9, The New Life, Epilogue and Future. 6 months later, Elena stands in the clearing around the Carriage house and watches workers finish the new structure. Not a mansion. She didn't want that. Just a small, well-built cabin with proper insulation, modern plumbing, solar panels, and with stove for heat. Catherine funded the construction, insisted on it. "You saved my mother's story," she'd said. "You gave me a family history I never had. This is the least I can do." The old carriage house remains standing beside the new cabin, preserved as a memorial. Sarah's remains have been moved to a proper cemetery in Bellingham, with a headstone that reads, Sarah Cordell, 1949 to 1968. Beloved mother, forever remembered. Catherine visits once a month, sometimes with her children and grandchildren. They hike the trails Elena has developed through the property. They sit by the fire and share stories about Sarah, piecing together who she was from her diary and Margaret's journals. Elena's son David visits too, bringing his family. Her grandchildren play with Ranger in the clearing, their laughter echoing through the trees. The property is Elena's now, free and clear. Catherine signed over full ownership as part of the settlement, keeping only the mineral rights. "You earned this," she'd said. "You fought for it when you had nothing. It's yours." Elena has turned part of the land into a refuge, not for minerals or profit, but for people who need what she needed 6 months ago, a place to catch their breath, women fleeing domestic violence, families experiencing homelessness, people who need somewhere safe to heal. She's partnered with organizations across the state. The cabins she's building aren't charity. They're temporary homes, places where people can stay for 3 months, 6 months, whatever they need to get back on their feet. Margaret's carriage house has become a center for this work. The cellar, once a tomb, is now a storage space for supplies. The main room holds resources, counseling information, donated clothes, and food. Sarah's story has become a rallying cry. When Elena gives talks at fundraisers, she tells people about a young woman who died because no one would help her, about how that shouldn't have happened then, and can't be allowed to happen now. The money Catherine gave her, a gift of $500,000 beyond the property, sits mostly untouched. Elena lives simply, works the land, helps people. She's not homeless anymore, but she remembers what it felt like, remembers the cold mornings in her car, the constant calculation of survival, the invisibility. She'll never forget. On this particular morning in May, Elena walks to the old carriage house and reads a plaque she's installed beside the door. In memory of Margaret Halloway and Sarah Cordell, 2 women who deserve better. May all who seek refuge here find it. Ranger, older now and graying around the muzzle, sits beside her. He'd found the camera that started everything, had led her to the hidden cellar door, had kept her alive through 3 brutal years. "Good boy," she tells him, scratching his ears. A car pulls into the clearing. Elena recognizes it. The intake coordinator from the homeless shelter in Everett. She's bringing someone who needs a place to stay. Elena walks to meet them, ready to help, ready to offer what she once needed and never received. Shelter, safety, a chance to start again. 3 years later, the mountain refuge has grown to 5 cabins, housing up to 20 people at a time. Elena is 61 now, her hair completely gray, her face weathered by mountain sun and wind. She looks nothing like the desperate woman who arrived here with nothing but a dying car and a loyal dog. She looks strong, purposeful, free. Catherine sits beside her on the porch of the main cabin, watching the sun set through the trees. They become close. These 2 women connected by a grandmother they barely knew in a tragedy that shaped both their lives. "I got an offer this week," Catherine says. "A mining company wants to lease the mineral rights for $20 million over 10 years. Elena raises her eyebrows. "Are you to take it?" "I'm thinking about it. The money would go to the refuge, to expanding what you're doing here. I don't need it. My teaching pension, and what we got from the settlement is more than enough." Sarah would like that. Elena says, knowing her legacy was helping people. They sit in comfortable silence as darkness falls. Inside the cabins, lights come on. People making dinner, settling in, finding moments of peace in the midst of their struggles. Elena's phone buzzes. A text from David, her son. "Mom, I'm proud of you. Love you." She smiles and texts back, "Love you too." Ranger, 13 years old now, moving slowly but still devoted, climbs the porch steps and collapses beside her with a satisfied groan. "You tired, buddy?" Elena asks. His tail thumps once against the wooden boards. Elena looks out at the property she almost lost, the inheritance she almost didn't accept, the secret that almost stayed buried forever. She thinks about the woman she was 3 years ago, homeless, invisible, convinced she didn't matter. And she thinks about who she is now, a landowner, an advocate, someone who helps people find their way back to themselves. The journey from there to here wasn't easy, but it was worth it. 5 years after inheriting the Carriage house, Elena Voss stands in the Seattle courthouse beside Catherine Morrison, waiting for a judge to make a decision that will affect hundreds of lives. The case has taken years to build. What started as Elena's fight to keep her property and Catherine's fight to claim her inheritance has evolved into something much larger. A class action lawsuit against Cordell Industries for illegal mineral extraction across multiple properties spanning 5 decades. Elena and Catherine aren't the only victims. The investigation triggered by Sarah's story uncovered a pattern. The Cordells had used intimidation, legal manipulation, and outright fraud to acquire or access mineral-rich land throughout the Cascades. Dozens of families had been pressured to sell for pennies on the dollar. Others had their property rights violated while Cordell Industries extracted resources without permission or payment. Now, 37 plaintiffs fill the courtroom. Elena knows many of them personally. They've become a community, bound by shared experience and collective determination. Judge Martha Hendricks enters, and everyone rises. She's a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who spent the past 6 months reviewing evidence, testimony, and corporate records that paint a damning picture of the Cordell family's business practices. "Please be seated," she says. The courtroom settles into tense silence. Judge Hendricks looks down at the documents before her. "I presided over many cases in my 20 years on the bench. Few have presented such clear evidence of sustained, deliberate corporate malfeasance. The Cordell family built their fortune not through honest business, but through exploitation, intimidation, and violation of property rights." Elena feels Catherine grip her hand. The evidence shows that Cordell Industries knowingly extracted minerals from properties they didn't own, manipulated county officials to harass legitimate property owners, and used their wealth and influence to silence opposition. This behavior is not only unethical, it's criminal. Judge Hendricks looks up, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom. "I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. Cordell Industries is hereby ordered to pay full restitution to all affected property owners, including royalties for all minerals extracted without permission, calculated at current market rates, with interest dating back to the original extractions." A murmur runs through the courtroom. Additionally, the judge continues, "I'm awarding punitive damages in the amount of $200 million to be distributed among the plaintiffs. And I'm referring this case to the State Attorney General for criminal prosecution of those individuals who participated in fraud, harassment, and conspiracy." The courtroom erupts. People crying, embracing, laughing with relief and vindication. Elena sits still, letting the reality sink in. They won. Not just her and Catherine, but everyone, every family the Cordells hurt, every person they dismissed as powerless. Catherine turns to her, tears streaming. "We did it. Sarah's story did this." "You did this," Elena corrects. "You chose to fight instead of taking the easy money and staying quiet. We both did. Together." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm them. Elena has gotten better at this over years. Learn how to speak clearly despite the cameras and microphones thrust in her face. "This victory belongs to everyone the Cordells tried to silence," she says. "It belongs to the families who lost their land. It belongs to Sarah Cordell, who died because her family valued money over her life. And it belongs to every person who's been told they don't matter because they're not wealthy or connected." A reporter asks, "What will you do with your portion of the settlement?" Elena doesn't hesitate. "The same thing I've been doing. The mountain refuge will expand. We'll be able to help more people, build more cabins, provide more resources. That's what matters." Catherine adds, "And we're establishing the Sarah Cordell Foundation. It will fund legal aid for property rights cases, support women fleeing domestic violence, and provide housing assistance. My mother's death won't be meaningless. It's going to help thousands of people. Section 11, Ranger's final gift. That evening, Elena returns to the mountain property exhausted but triumphant. Ranger waits on the porch, 15 years old now, his muzzle completely gray. He moves stiffly, arthritis making every step painful despite the medication. She sits beside him, running her hand through his fur. We won, buddy. We actually won. His tail thumps weakly against the wooden boards. Elena has known for months that Ranger's time is limited. The vet has been honest. He's old for his breed, living on borrowed time. But he's happy, comfortable, still interested in food and affection. Still her constant companion. You started all this, you know, she tells him. You found that camera. You showed me the hidden door. None of this happens without you. He leans against her, and they sit together watching the sun set through the trees. The same view she's had for 5 years now, never getting old, always offering peace. Later that night, Ranger's breathing changes. Elena recognizes the sound from when Michael died, that wet labor quality that means the body is shutting down. She carries him inside, settles him on his bed by the wood stove, sits beside him, stroking his head, talking softly about all the places they've been together, the parking lots and trailheads where they survived, the day they arrived at this property, every important moment of the past 6 years. You saved my life, she whispers, more than once. You kept me warm, kept me safe, kept me going when I wanted to give up. Ranger's breathing slows. His eyes, cloudy with age, focus on her face. It's okay, Elena tells him, crying now. You can rest. You've done enough. You've been the best friend I could have asked for. He takes one more breath. Then another, shallower. Then nothing. Elena sits with him for a long time, her hand on his chest, feeling the absence of heartbeat, the silence where there was once breath. Finally, she wraps him in a blanket and carries him outside. She buries him at the edge of the clearing, under the cedar tree where she hid the evidence that first week, the tree that marked the beginning of everything. She places a stone marker, simple but permanent. Ranger, loyal friend, guardian, hero. He led the way when no one else would. Catherine arrives the next morning, bringing coffee and presents. She sits with Elena in silence for a while, both of them watching the sunrise. I'm sorry, Catherine finally says. I know how much he meant to you. He was my family when I didn't have one, Elena says. He chose me when I was nobody, when I had nothing to offer except maybe half a peanut butter sandwich. That's the best kind of family, the kind that chooses you. They sit together, drinking coffee, remembering. Catherine talks about her adoptive mother, Helen, who died 2 years ago. How Helen had known more than she'd let on, had protected Catherine from a truth while keeping the door open just enough. She told me once that my birth mother loved me more than anything, Catherine says, that she'd made impossible choices to keep me safe. I didn't understand then, but she was trying to tell me, in the only way she could. She sounded like she was a good mother. She was, and Sarah was too in the short time she had. And Margaret, even though she carried so much guilt. Catherine pauses. We come from a line of women who did their best with impossible situations. That's something to honor. Elena thinks about this. About Margaret hiding Sarah's death to protect Catherine. About Sarah running into mountains to save her unborn child. About Helen raising Catherine without the full story but with complete love. And about herself choosing to expose the truth even when it would have been easier to take the money and disappear. I think we did honor them, Elena says, by refusing to let the story end in silence. Section 12, full circle. 2 years after Ranger's death, Elena walks through the expanded mountain refuge with a young woman named Maya. She's 23, recently escaped from an abusive marriage, and she's been living in one of the cabins for 6 weeks. This place saved me, Maya says quietly. I didn't know where to go. I had no money, no family who would help. I called a hotline, and they told me about the refuge. I thought it was too good to be true. It's real, Elena assures her, and it's here as long as you need it. How did you build all this? How did you afford it? Elena smiles. That's a long story. But the short version is that my grandmother left me a property with a secret buried underneath it. And when I chose to tell the truth instead of hiding it, everything changed. Maya looks around at the 10 cabins now dotting the property, at the community center where people share meals and resources, at the garden where residents grow vegetables, at the workshop where they learn job skills. You gave people like me a second chance. Maya says, you saw us when everyone else looked away. Someone needed to. Besides, I was you 7 years ago. Homeless, scared, invisible. I know what it feels like to have nowhere to go. You were homeless? Maya sounds shocked. For 3 years. Lived in my car with my dog. Workday labor when I could find it. Went hungry more often than not. Elena pauses. I inherited this property when I had $43 to my name and a car that was falling apart. I know how fast everything can change. How one piece of good luck can shift your entire trajectory. They walk past a memorial plaque for Sarah Cordell. Maya stops to read it. Who was she? My grandmother's daughter. She died here in 1968, running from a family that valued money over her safety. Her death stayed hidden for 50 years until I inherited this place and found her diary. Elena touches the plaque gently. She's the reason any of this exists. Her story exposed corruption that had been happening for decades. The money we got from that case built everything you see here. She must have been brave. She was 19 and terrified, but she chose to run instead of giving up her baby. She chose love over safety. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. Maya is quiet for a moment. I left my daughter with my sister when I ran. I couldn't take her. My husband would have tracked us through her. But I miss her every day. Once you're stable, we'll help you get her back. We have lawyers who work with the refuge. Family reunification cases are something we handle regularly. Really, hope floods Maya's face. Really, you're not just surviving here, Maya. You're building a future, and your daughter is part of that future. They continue walking, and Elena shows her the new construction, a counseling center, a legal aid office, a child care facility for residents who have their children with them. The Sarah Cordell Foundation funded most of this. Elena explains. Catherine Morrison, Sarah's daughter, has made her life's work to turn her mother's tragedy into something that helps people. Where is she now? Bellingham, teaching. But she visits once a month. You'll meet her. As they walk back toward the main cabin, a car pulls up. Elena recognizes it. Her son David, with his wife and Elena's 2 grandchildren. Grandma! The kids pile out of the car and run to her. She catches them both in a hug, laughing. David approaches, smiling. We brought lunch. Thought we'd have a picnic if the weather holds. Perfect timing. Elena introduces Maya, who nods shyly at the family. They spread blankets in the clearing and share sandwiches and fruit. The kids chase each other around while the adults talk. David tells stories about his cases. He's shifted his practice to focus more on housing rights and tenant advocacy, inspired by his mother's work. You changed everything, Mom, he says. Not just for yourself. For all of us. You showed me what actually matters. Elena watches her grandchildren playing, thinking about how different this is from 7 years ago. Then, she'd been alone in a parking lot, hungry and cold, counting dollars and wondering how long she could survive. Now she's surrounded by family, purpose, community. Now she matters. The transformation still astonishes her sometimes. How quickly things can change when you refuse to stay invisible. Section 13, The Ripple Effect. That evening, after David and his family leave, Elena sits on her porch and opens her laptop. She's been working on a book, documenting everything that happened. Sarah's story, Margaret's choices, her own journey from homelessness to advocacy. A publisher in New York wants to buy it. They're calling it an important American story about women, poverty, and speaking truth to power. Elena isn't sure about that. She just knows people need to understand how systems fail the vulnerable, how wealth protects wrongdoing, how silence enables abuse, and how one person deciding to speak up can create ripples that spread farther than anyone expects. Her email inbox has 73 new messages. She scans through them. Interview requests from podcasts and magazines. A note from a documentary filmmaker. Thank you messages from refuge residents, past and present. And one email that makes her stop. The subject line reads, "You saved my mother." Elena clicks it open. "Dear Ms. Voss, my name is Jennifer Chun. My mother, Amy Chun, disappeared in 1967. We always believed she ran away. She'd been struggling with family pressure and had talked about leaving. But we never knew what really happened to her. Last week, I saw your interview about Sarah Cordell's case and the investigation it triggered. The reporter mentioned that other victims had been identified. I reached out to police, and they confirmed that my mother was found buried near another property the Cordells tried to acquire. For 57 years, we didn't know where she was. We held out hope that maybe she'd started a new life somewhere, that she was happy even if she couldn't contact us. Learning she's been dead all this time is devastating. But at least now we know. At least we can bury her properly. At least we understand what happened. That's because of you. Because you refused to let Sarah's story stay buried. Because you fought even when you had every reason to walk away. Thank you. From our entire family. Thank you for giving us closure we never thought we'd have. With deepest gratitude, Jennifer Chun. Elena read the email 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She'd known about Amy Chun, the 4th victim mentioned in news coverage. But she hadn't known Amy's family was still searching, still hoping, still wondering. Now they have answers. Not the answers they wanted, but answers nonetheless. She responds, "Dear Jennifer, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry it took so long for the truth to emerge. Your mother deserved better. She deserved to be found, to be mourned, to have her story told. If there's anything I can do, if you'd like to visit the refuge, if you'd like to speak with others affected by the Cordells' actions, if you just need someone to talk to, please reach out. You're not alone in this. Your mother's death mattered. Her life mattered. And now, finally, people know. With sympathy and solidarity." Elena, she sends the email and closes her laptop. Outside, darkness has fallen completely. The forest is alive with night sounds. Owls calling, wind in the trees, the distant creek running high with late summer snowmelt. Elena thinks about all the lives connected to this place. Sarah and Amy, who died here. Catherine and Jennifer, who grew up not knowing the truth. Margaret, who carried guilt for 50 years. The 37 families who won justice in court. The hundreds of people who found refuge in these mountains. All of it connected. All of it rippling outward from one decision. Margaret's choice to leave everything to Elena, and Elena's choice to expose the truth instead of taking the easy way out. She stands and walks to Ranger's grave. The grass has grown over it now, soft and green. Wildflowers bloom around the stone marker. You'd like, "What's happening here?" she tells him. You'd like the people, the dogs that come with them, the kids who play in the clearing. You like knowing that what you started kept growing. A young shepherd mix, one of the refuge's current residents brought him, trots over and sits beside her. His ears perk up, alert and curious. Reminds her of Ranger in his younger days. "Taking care of things?" she asks the dog. His tail wags. Elena smiles. "Good. We need that." She returns to the cabin, builds up the fire, and settles in for the night. Tomorrow, 3 new families arrive at the refuge. Next week, Catherine visits to discuss expanding into a second location. Next month, Elena gives a keynote speech at a national housing advocacy conference. The work continues. The mission grows. The ripples spread. And somewhere in the mountains, under cedar trees and star-filled skies, the legacy of women who refuse to disappear lives on. Epilogue, 7 years later. Elena Voss is 65 years old when she stands once again in front of the Carriage house, now a museum and education center, and watches a dedication ceremony. The governor of Washington is here, state legislators, representatives from 24 advocacy organizations, media from across the country. They're dedicating a new monument, bronze statues of 3 women standing together, Margaret, Sarah, and Elena, representing 3 generations of women who fought in different ways against systems designed to silence them. The sculptor has captured something essential. Margaret looks determined but burdened. Sarah looks young and hopeful despite everything. Elena looks weathered but unbroken. Catherine stands beside Elena, her arm linked through hers. They become family in every sense that matters. Catherine's grandchildren call Elena Aunt Elena. Elena's grandchildren call Catherine Aunt Kate. They built something together that extends beyond blood or law. A chosen family of survivors and advocates, bound by shared mission and mutual respect. The governor speaks about courage and justice, about how ordinary people can create extraordinary change, about how Elena Voss arrived at this property with nothing and built something that's helped thousands. But Elena barely hears the speech. She's looking at the faces in the crowd. Maya is here, now a certified counselor working at the refuge, her daughter beside her. Jennifer Chin is here, having become an advocate for missing persons cases. David and his family. People Elena helped over the years, people who helped her. And in the back, she sees someone she recognizes from 7 years ago. The clerk from the grocery store in Skycomish, the one who'd been dismissive and cold that first day Elena bought supplies. The woman catches Elena's eye and mouths. "I'm sorry." Elena nods. She understands. People don't always recognize strength until it's proven, don't always see worth until it's demonstrated. She's not angry anymore, just determined that others won't have to prove themselves the way she did. After the ceremony, as the crowd disperses, Elena walks alone to the edge of the property, to the geological survey marker that now designates the boundary between the refuge land and what used to be Cordell property. The Cordells lost everything. Cordell Industries was dissolved, assets liquidated to pay settlements and legal fees. James Cordell served 3 years in prison for fraud. Michael Cordell moved to another state, works a normal job under a different name. Their empire, built on exploitation and covered with respectable veneer, collapsed completely once the truth emerged. Elena doesn't feel satisfaction about that. Exactly. Just a sense that justice, imperfect and delayed but real, finally arrived. She pulls out her phone and calls David. "Hey, Mom. Great ceremony." "Thanks, honey. Listen, I've been thinking. It's time to write the next chapter." "Of the book? You already finished that." "No, of the work. I want to start training others to do what I do, create a network of refuges across the country, all operating on the same model. I can't do this forever, but the need isn't going away." David is quiet for a moment. Then, "I think that's brilliant. And I think you'll make it happen because that's what you do. You see what needs doing, and you do it. I learned from good teachers. Sarah taught me that love means sacrifice. Margaret taught me that guilt can be transformed into purpose. And Ranger taught me that loyalty matters more than comfort. And you taught me," David says softly, "that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be." After the call, Elena sits on a fallen log and watches the sun set through the trees. 7 years ago, she'd sat in this exact spot, homeless, alone, frightened, and wondered if she had the strength to fight for this property. She'd had nothing then. No resources, no power, no reason to believe she could win against wealthy adversaries. But she'd had something they didn't. Nothing left to lose. And that made her dangerous. She stood when powerful people expected her to fall. She spoke when they expected silence. She fought when they expected surrender. And she won, not just for herself. For Sarah, for Catherine, for Maya and Jennifer and hundreds of others who needed someone to prove that the system could be beaten, that justice could be claimed, that voices could be heard. Elena stands and walks back toward the cluster of buildings that now make up the refuge complex. Lights glow in windows. Smoke rises from chimneys. People who found their way here are making dinner, settling in, beginning the slow process of healing. This is what matters, not the statues or the speeches or the media attention. This, the actual work of helping people survive and eventually thrive. Sarah Cordell died in darkness and secrecy 57 years ago. But her story, finally told, has created light that reaches farther than anyone could have imagined. And Elena Voss, who once had nothing, now has everything that matters. Purpose, family, legacy, and the bone-deep knowledge that she made a difference. The mountains hold their secrets until someone is brave enough to excavate them. Elena was that someone, and the truth, once unearthed, changed everything.